The president of Ukraine urgently dispatched troops to Kharkiv after a wave of Russian attacks. Ukraine admits the bitter truth: Russia controls up to 70% of DPR. Indonesia still wants to buy weapons from Russia. The president of Ukraine urgently dispatched troops to Kharkiv after a wave of Russian attacks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kiev will deploy more forces to the Kharkiv front after Russia increased its offensive activities in this area. Speaking on the evening of May 10, Mr. Zelensky said, "Kharkiv is the main focus. Today, the Russian army tried to expand combat operations. We know the size of their forces and plans. They are soldiers, artillery, drones are dealing with them." According to Mr. Zelensky, the Ukrainian army is adding forces to the Kharkiv front. Along the border and along the entire front line, we will disrupt any Russian offensive intentions. The president of Ukraine said he is regularly briefed by Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky on the battlefield situation, and is in regular contact with the defense minister. He emphasized that it is important for partners to support the Ukrainian armed forces with timely supplies. Previously, there were reports that the Russian military had increased operations in Kharkiv. During a meeting with Slovak President Zuzana Chaputova, President Zelensky confirmed that the Russian army had launched a new wave of attacks in Kharkiv. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense announced that reserve forces had been mobilized to the northern Kharkiv area to cope. Pravda sources said the Russian army took control of 4 villages in Kharkiv. To date, Moscow has not provided any information about its activities in the Kharkiv region. Over the past few months, the area has been used by Ukrainian forces to launch drone, artillery, and missile attacks on Russia's border areas, mainly targeting Belgorod. Russian forces largely withdrew from Kharkiv in 2022, during the first year of the conflict, but after stopping Kiev's counteroffensive last year, Russian forces returned to the offensive and slowly made some progress in Donetsk. In March, concerns about the Kharkiv region increased when Russian leaders called for the establishment of a buffer zone within Ukraine, something Moscow believes is necessary to protect Russia. Ukraine admits the bitter truth: Russia controls up to 70% of DPR. A commander of the Ukrainian armed forces said the probability that the Russian army controlled the entire territory of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, was about 70%. The probability that the Russian army will occupy the entire territory of the DPR is about 70%, said the commander of the 92nd Separate Assault Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Pavel Fedosenko. According to The Economist magazine, Kiev is also very concerned about the possibility of a breakthrough by the Russian armed forces towards Kharkov. At the same time, the Ukrainian side attaches great importance to preventing Russia's attack on Konstantinovka and Drushkovka, otherwise the enemy will be able to easily reach Kryvyi Rog, Dnieper, and Kharkov within just a few weeks. Meanwhile, senior Ukrainian military officers are meeting to find ways to slow down Russia's advance in the Chasiv Yar area. Along with that, according to Mr. Konstantin Nemishev, commander of the Kraken Battalion, a notorious far-right unit, under the direction of the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, the Russian army may try to launch a major attack on Ukraine. Kharkov as early as mid-May. This military official made the above comment because many sources in Ukraine recently reported that about 50,000 Russian soldiers and a lot of heavy military equipment are believed to be concentrated in the areas. The sector may have a breakthrough in this direction. Indonesia still wants to buy weapons from Russia. According to TASS, about 30% of the weapons in service with the Indonesian armed forces are produced by Russia, and Jakarta still wants to maintain military cooperation with Moscow. Indonesian ambassador to Russia Jose Tavares on May 8 told TASS news agency that Indonesia has never terminated the deal to buy Su-35 fighters from Russia and is waiting for the situation to become more comfortable to re-implement it. Contract. Russia and Indonesia signed this agreement. Indonesia has never cancelled the agreement, but paused to avoid certain inconveniences, Mr. Tavares said. The ambassador added that Indonesia will return to this issue when the situation becomes more comfortable. According to Mr. Tavares's estimates, about 30% of the weapons in service with the Indonesian armed forces are produced by Russia. CNN Indonesia reported at the end of December 2021 that Jakarta had abandoned plans to buy 11 Russian-made Su-35 multi-role fighters due to lack of funding. Indonesia needs Russian weapons. News about Indonesia signing a contract worth $1.1 billion to buy 11 Su-35 fighters became known in early 2018. In July 2019, the Indonesian ambassador to Russia at that time, Muhammad Wahid Supriyadi, said that the delay delaying the implementation of the contract was inevitable due to the complexity of arms sales, involving government agencies and companies. In March 2020, Bloomberg reported that the Indonesian government decided to abandon plans to implement the Su-35 contract with Russia due to lack of budget, consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the threat of imposition by the U.S. sanctions against Indonesia if it buys Russian weapons. Russian weapons have been an element in the Indonesian military for decades. According to the Montaigne Institute, an independent French non-profit research organization, since the beginning of the 21st century, Indonesia has diversified its weapons by purchasing from Russia Su-30 and Su-27 fighters, directly from Russia. Mi-35P and Mi-17 helicopters, BMP-3 armored vehicles, anti-ship missiles, all kinds of artillery. Thus, in the Indonesian army, there exist both Western and Russian weapon lines. In 2016, during a meeting between Indonesian President Joko Widodo and Russian President Vladimir Putin, Mr. Jokowi presented a list of weapons that Indonesia wanted to buy, including Kilo-class submarines and multi-role Su-2 fighters. 35 of Russia. Indonesia also plans to build a maintenance center for purchased weapon systems and cooperate in the production of ammunition and other weapons on Indonesian soil. Indonesian ambassador to Russia Wahid Supriyadi said at that time, "We are negotiating to buy submarines, but of course, there are problems and requirements that need to be resolved." The Kilo is an attack submarine designed primarily for anti-ship and anti-submarine operations in relatively shallow waters. Asia's breakneck economic growth has made the security of sea lanes a matter of survival, and the region's naval powers are racing to expand their undersea missile warfare capabilities through the purchase of advanced submarines. Despite being the world's largest archipelago, Indonesia only had 2 outdated submarines as of 2016. Since 2007, Indonesia has been negotiating with Russia to buy at least 2 Kilo-class ships, but progress has been slow and until now, the two sides have not come to a final decision on this deal. In 2020, it was reported that at that time, Russia only agreed to sell Indonesia 2 used Kilo ships that were considered too old. Policy changes? In August 2023, Indonesia announced to order more Rafale fighters from France and committed to buying F-15EX Eagle fighters from the U.S. The purchase of 2 advanced Western fighters signals a change in policy for Jakarta, a country that previously pursued a non-aligned doctrine, equipping its forces with both American and SUF F-16 fighters. -30 of Russia. These aging fighters came from 2 opposing sides during the Cold War, showing that Indonesia avoided close alliances with one side or the other. According to the agreement reached in August 2023, Indonesia will be the first customer of the US F-15EX fighter line. The export version for Indonesia is called the F-15IND. Boeing, the American aircraft manufacturer, said on August 21, 2023 that it had signed a memorandum of understanding with Indonesia on the sale of 24 F-15 fighters, according to Washington's permission. Jakarta wanted to buy F-35 fighters, but there is information that the U.S. government believes that the Indonesian Air Force is not ready to equip 5th-generation fighters. The U.S. view is that a 4th or 4.5-generation fighter is more suitable and offers the F-16 Block 72 Viper fighter for sale. Some observers say the coldness of the U.S. side led to Jakarta choosing F-15 and Rafale fighters. The Rafale order is the first fighter purchase contract from Indonesia with French firm Dassault Aviation. The French contractor's agreement with Jakarta was announced in February 2022, whereby Dassault provided 42 Rafale fighters with missiles, worth $8.1 billion, the first batch of 6 aircraft. The second batch consists of 18 fighters, with a final batch of 16 to be ordered at a later date.